It's a project that I started with a friend of mine, Jonathan Johnson, and I'll talk about him in a second. Essentially, we found that there was not a good repository for defensive information when it came to certain Windows technologies. So we're starting with Windows. Specifically, secureable objects is what we go through. One guide per secureable object. There's a long-form explanation of the underlying technology that we're trying to help you defend. And then we do give detection and visibility guidance at the end. Eventually, we want to expand to macOS, Linux, potentially AWS. AWS has an unlimited number of guides we could do for EC2, S3, IAM, but that's down the road, and I'm going to try and drag Daniel Heinzen into that. Brief background on me. I'm a managing consultant here at Spectre Ops. I'm also the producer of the Detection Challenging Paradigms podcast. If you want some more defensive-focused content to look at, Jared is the host, actually, of that. Before that, I came from a company called InfoSight. I was part of their managed threat hunting division. I was also a physical and network penetration tester for the California Secretary of State's office. I did voting machine certification programs for them. And then for 3 months last year, I was the lead detection engineer at Datto. The other co-author is Jonathan Johnson. He's currently a senior threat researcher at Binary Defense. He was a former host on the Detection Challenging Paradigms podcast. He has a couple other projects that we heavily reference in the Defender's Guides. He has one called Telemetry Source. He has MSRS RPC to attack. And then he has one called Marvel Lab that'll help you stand up a defensive lab in your home environment with minimal effort. He used to be a senior consultant here at Spectre Ops and a researcher at Red Canary before that. So what are we trying to solve? Typically, when you're a defender and you're trying to come up with information about a specific technology, sometimes the information is hard to find. It's split between 1,000 different Microsoft pages, blog posts, and other resources. And a lot of times it's not correlated to defensive data at all. So if you go read up on what the service control manager is for Windows services on their learn.microsoft.com, as it became this year, there's not going to be any information on the event IDs or anything associated with that. They're not going to link it to MDE or how you can actually detect it. Then, if you do read some defensive blog, how do you know that the person who wrote it actually has a decent background? So hopefully, at this point, you already trust Spectre Ops as a good source of information. So the information is vetted by the people that we have working here, making sure that the information we put out isn't garbage. And then you have to test the information, and a lot of places don't. Even Microsoft has some incorrect data that's just sitting in their documentation, and yeah, it's crazy, right? So hopefully they don't have a booth here. But what we fix is we find the information for you. This sometimes includes books that you can't even search on the internet, and compiling that information into each of the Defender's Guides. Again, hopefully we are a trusted source already. If not, you can read through the information and see if you trust us. And then we test every piece of information that we put into one of these Defender's Guides to make sure that it's accurate and still true and updated info. What are the sections in a Defender's Guide? So the introduction is pretty small, but there is a short description of the guide, why it's important to an attacker, and therefore why it would be important to a defender. Then we have an underlying technology section. We stole this from a concept that one of our partner companies put out called the Alerting and Detection Strategies. So essentially we give everyone's familiar with ELI 5, right? Explain like I'm 5. This is ELI FISA, right? So we're going to explain it to you like you've never had to defend this technology before. We're going to go through the common usage. So if you're trying to baseline in your environment and you want to know what services or registry or files are used for commonly, we're going to tell you what they're used for day to day to help you build that baseline. And then we're going to go into some pretty deep internals in whatever technology the guide is written on. Including RPC information. We're going to go into COM objects if it's relevant to what we're looking at, and give you a deep dive of that technology that may not be found on other blog posts and other solutions. Then we have a beefy section on the security of whatever that technology is. So we're going to give you object-specific access rights for each of the secureable objects that we're looking for. And then we're going to give you a list of what we've seen as top attack vectors. We have a malware lab, and so we run massive amounts of samples of malware in that lab. And so we're able to tell you definitively, like across a large set of malware, these are the top attack registry keys. These are the names of services that get installed most commonly in attacks. After that, we're going to give you the relevant event IDs for 3 different EDRs. We're going to give you, well, security events are not an EDR, but we're going to give you the relevant built-in security events. We're going to give you MDE, and then we're going to give you Sysmon. Like, these are ones that you're commonly going to see in a lab environment. We're not really going to give you something that's more enterprise or more specific, like CrowdStrike or something. But it'll get you started for sure. Where are the guides? They are primarily on GitHub. This is going to be the most updated and source of truth version of the guide. defendersguide.com links to the GitHub repo. We also release them on Medium just because SpectreOps has a pretty big following there when we put these guides out. So let's look at what one of these looks like. All right, hopefully the internet here at the conference works, but it's Black Hat, so. So right now there's only 2 that have been released. Full disclosure, I just had a baby 4 months ago, and that has taken like most of my time at home, but I'll show you some of the stuff that we're going to be releasing shortly. So the first one that we released was the Windows registry. So this is what the Defender's Guide to the Windows registry looks like. So we have an introduction, a registry overview. I'm not going to explain what the registry is better than Microsoft, so we kind of stole their quote there. We go into what the registry is used for on a day-to-day basis, registry internals, the different root keys that exist in the registry, registry key values, the size limits of each one, what commonly interacts with the registry on a Windows operating system. We have the Windows APIs listed as well and the links to the relevant pages for that. We also have a link to the MSRPC to Attack by Johnny if you want to do some more research into the Windows Remote Registry Protocol. Registry security, so we've got all the access rights here from Microsoft. We have an explanation on how to set a SACL if you don't know how. We cover this in our training class, adversary tactics detection, because it's an important way to monitor things that are happening in the registry that you may not have telemetry for already. Then we've got our list of Windows security events, MDE, Sysmon, telemetry notes, and then there is a link in our repo to the top attack vectors CSV that we've compiled, and then all the external resources that we use to write this specific guide. So right now we have Windows Registry and Windows Services. The Registry one was retweeted by Swift on Security, so it's massively more popular than the Services one, but I like the Services one better, but your mileage may vary. So this kind of follows the same procedure. Goes into the Service Control Manager, service parameters, built-in security methods for services, protected services, service-specific access rights, Service Control Manager specific access rights, and then we go into attack vectors and the same telemetry at the bottom. So this is what the guides look like, and eventually we like to form more of them and then create potentially a book out of it, but that is the gist of what one of them looks like. So what are we planning in the future for this project after the demo? So the Defender's Guide to the Windows File System is currently in development. It should be released next month, so we'll have that one up there. The Defender's Guide to Name Pipes and Windows Processes are the next 2 planned releases after that. In conjunction with the Defender's Guide to the Windows File System, we're also going to be releasing a new project to align with the Defender's Guide called the Defender's Toolkit. So there will be a PowerShell module per guide that lets you do some of the stuff we're talking about, view and set SACLs, install and uninstall services just in a quicker way so you can do some testing and validate your telemetry in a lab. I'm not saying you should ever use anything from this in a production environment, but just to speed the testing of the stuff that we talk about in the guides. So I just really want to emphasize that it's going to be centered around lab environments and not something that's production ready. I'm no Chris Thompson software developer level with a t-shirt and everything, but we'll get there. So that is the future plan. That's it. That's what I've got.